I'm a freak, in the literal sense. I was born this way. Doctors said it was a rare skin condition. It felt more like a curse. I was born with thick, scaly red scabs covering my entire body. My outer nerves were dulled. I could feel no pain or pleasure from touch. The early years of my life were a series of long stays at hospitals and clinics. I spent more time with doctors and needles than I did with my own mother and father. It's no wonder they left when they did. After that, the money dried up, and the doctors and needles went away. That was how I went from being a freak to being a homeless freak. I wandered around the Midwest for a couple of years, begging for food, sleeping under park benches, the kind of shit life you expect from someone who looks as fucked up as I do. Eventually, I took the only job that would have me. I worked in a freak show. It was your standard old-fashioned deformed mutant circus. There was a bearded lady, a grossly obese man, two dwarves who fought each other with swords, and a little Polish boy who had 4 arms. I was the Lizard Man.
Come one, come all, come see the Lizard Man. He is covered in scales. Come see the terrifying Lizard Man. He feels no pain.
That was what the freak show's ringleader would call out before I took stage. I wasn't the main attraction, obviously. That was the kid with 4 arms. I was a sideshow freak, too ugly for normal society, but not ugly enough for center stage. I worked at that freak show for 15 years. There were certainly benefits to being part of an ugly circus, as we would tend to call it. Pay wasn't terrible. We got room and board. We got to travel the country. The other freaks didn't care how ugly I was. I wouldn't go as far as to call them my friends, but they were willing to talk to me, if nothing else. People don't realize, or maybe they do, and I'm just too cynical, is that no matter how horrible our outsides are, our insides are the same as everybody else's. What I mean is, even the Lizard Man gets lonely. And the other freaks were my company. They made me feel a bit less shitty. There were bad parts in being in a freak show as well. The ringleader, Alabaster Constant, was a horrible little man. He treated us like shit. He would call us all sorts of fucked up names. He beat the shit out of us when we got out of line, or when he wasn't happy with our performance. Never bothered me much. The Lizard Man feels no pain. We also had to do a lot of manual labor. As it turns out, freak shows don't generally have crews to set up tents, drive trailers, and clean up outhouses, so the freaks would do it. It was grueling work, and I hated it. But the worst part was performing. The act was pretty simple, and it never changed. I would run out on stage and do my most intimidating roar at the audience. I would act like a menace and scare them a bit, probably for no more than 5 minutes. Then the 2 dwarves, German fellows named Randall and Goman, would charge out on stage and plunge their little swords into my rough exterior. The Lizard Man feels no pain. After a minute of grappling with the small warriors, they would hog-tie me, then drag me off stage before beginning their own short duel. The crowd always met my departure with applause. I was left backstage, where the bearded lady and the 4-armed kid would untie me, a task that was done quite quickly, given the number of arms. There I would wait until the show was over, and I could start cleaning up. For years I think I tricked myself into believing I liked being a part of the freak show. I tricked myself into believing that it made me feel useful, into believing that it gave me a purpose. But I was just fooling myself. Although the Lizard Man feels no pain, every time those little dwarves delivered a slash into my rough exterior, I did feel pain. I felt the audience's hatred for me, and that hurt. I probably could have dealt with their hate. After all, hate was all I had ever got in my entire life. A little bit more wouldn't have killed me, but I could feel something else too. I could feel the audience's fear of me. When I became savage on stage, I could feel the audience's heart drop. I could feel them start to sweat. Once there was a little girl in the audience. She was wearing a pink dress and had blonde hair, all wrapped up in a baby blue bow. She was smiling when I entered the stage. She had one of those perfect, never disobeys Papa and always eats her vegetables kind of smile. But the second after I set my scaly foot on stage, she had no smile. The girl cried when she saw me, and cowered when I roared. The lizard man feels no pain, but her tears were like acid on my skin. Being a freak hurts in ways that you couldn't even imagine. I hated being something that could give children nightmares. Scaring people hurt me more than any sword those dwarves could have cut me with. I don't work at the freak show anymore. I left about a year ago. I'm writing this to tell you why. On my last day at the freak show, there was a man in the audience in a blue suit and pink tie. He had silver hair, and the kind of glasses you imagine a plantation owner must have. Rich, powerful men's glasses. I first saw him when I took the stage and did my routine. I probably wouldn't have noticed him except for one thing. Mr. Blue Suit Pink Tie didn't look scared. He smiled when I roared. He clapped when I tried to terrify him. He was fearless, and he was loud. At the end of my act, he yelled out, "Good show! Bravo!" His demeanor never wavered. Despite his odd behavior, I wouldn't have thought twice about Mr. Blue Suit Pink Tie if he hadn't come up to me after the show. Normally the freaks weren't allowed to talk to the public. The ringleader saw to that. But somehow, while I was breaking down the wooden pallets we used as the stage, he snuck into the tent where we performed. "You are a truly terrifying man. You must be proud to command such fear." I hadn't heard him enter, so his voice was startling. "What? No! How did you get back here?" "You need not worry about me. I'm just a fan of your performance. You truly are the best freak I've ever seen." Thanks, I guess. He was incredibly, unbelievably proper. He felt unreal, like a cartoon. His voice was too perfectly toned. His clothes and face were so exact and pristine that if you saw a picture of him, you would have guessed it was airbrushed. And God, the way he moved, it was like he oozed charm with every step. He had been studying me for several seconds since his response, and I found myself unable to move until he spoke again. "It seems to me that you don't like being a freak." I can't change it." "You're right, you can't. But I can understand why you don't like it. After all, you command such terror in your audience. I would view that as a major benefit." The charm of his demeanor did little to muffle the pain his words caused. I felt my awe swiftly melt into annoyance. "Yeah, well, some of us don't like scaring people." I was mumbling, all of a sudden hoping that he would leave. "I can tell by looking at you, you hate causing fear to others, don't you?" "Yeah." He then laughed. I thought it was odd. He was, however, as charming as ever. "Do you think that if you were normal, you would be any happier?" "Look, I'm not really the type for conversation." "I'm not looking for conversation. I was impressed by your performance, and I'm trying to decide if it would be worth my time to remedy your condition." Mr. Blue Suit Pink Tie had become stern. His charm had become pure intensity in the span of a second. "Remedy my condition?" "Yes, to fix you. Make you normal, I suppose." I remained silent. No words would come, and I found myself unable to go back to my task at hand. "I know what you're thinking. Can't be done. All the doctors and preachers in the world couldn't fix your horrible red skin. Well, I'm not a doctor, and I'm certainly not a preacher. I'm just a man who can get things done." Mr. Blue Suit Pink Tie stared at me. He waited for a response. How would you fix me?" That's not important. What is important is that I could do it. But before I do, I need to know. If you weren't like this anymore, I mean if your skin was normal and you were handsome like me, would you be happy? I didn't have to hesitate for this question. This conversation had pulled me so far away from the stage I was deconstructing that I didn't even have time to think. Yes, it would make me happy. Why? Because I don't want to scare anyone anymore. I wouldn't have to make any more children cry. I wouldn't be hated. The man's brow furrowed. Well, I don't know about that. The way I see it, you'll be giving children nightmares for the rest of your days. But I can fix your skin. I can make you normal if that's what you want. It is. The man gave me a bottle of blue liquid and told me to drink all of it before I fell asleep. It must have been the man's charm and grace, but even after hundreds of failed cures, I believed that this blue liquid would finally fix me. I believed that it would make me less ugly. I drank the mysterious drink, and I slept. I had a nightmare. It was terrifying, but I can't remember it anymore. The next day, I looked in the mirror at a face that wasn't my own. It was a tired face, but it was devoid of rough scabs. It was peachy and light, not red and inflamed. I wasn't the lizard man anymore. I could feel for the first time in my life both pleasure and pain, and other feelings that were not so strong, but they were still there. I left the freak show the moment I could. I had money saved up from all the years I've been working there. I used it to take a bus to Colorado. I had been there twice while performing as the Lizard Man, and I've always loved the way the mountains looked. I figured that if I was finally going to look normal for a change, that I wanted to surround myself with as much beauty as I could. I got a hotel in a small town. My plan was to live off my savings, find a job, maybe a girl, and settle down and have a normal life. That's what everybody in the freak show always dreamed of, having a normal life. My plan was cut short when I found the blue-suited man in my hotel room late one night. He was sitting neatly on the dresser next to my bed. "You look great. I truly amaze myself." He sounded different. His charming demeanor was entirely gone. He sounded impatient. It sounded mean. "Yes, thank you for everything." "I don't want your thanks. I want what is owed to me." His expression was blank. His tone was hostile. "Oh, okay, well, You are going to give children nightmares. You're going to make them feel as ugly as you did." "What?" I didn't stutter. I never stutter. You're going to give children nightmares. Forever. I was so confused. I kept feeling the skin on my face to make sure he hadn't changed it. It still felt smooth and soft. I felt the sweat on my brow. Mr. Blue Suit Pink Tie produced a bottle from his coat. It was just like the one he had given me to cure my affliction, but the liquid inside was black. "This is all the ugliness that was on the outside of you. It's practically poisonous. You're going to find a child every day until you die, and you're going to find a way to make them drink a drop of this liquid. And if you don't, you'll go back to being the ugly motherfucker they called the Lizard Man. Do you understand?" How would I even do that? "I don't care how. That's your problem." "Why would you make me do this?" "You'll never stop giving them nightmares. You were born a freak, and that means someone wanted you to be a freak. I'm just making sure that you stay that way." I was all but speechless. I whimpered, "What does the drink do?" The blue man smiled. "When those kids drink this, they're going to feel like shit all day, but they won't know why. They won't even be able to explain what's wrong, and they'll have the most horrible nightmares you could imagine. Their wildest fears will torment them incessantly. Their biggest insecurities will be flaunted in their face. They will suffer, and it will be because of you." I had no response. The man didn't wait for one. He set the black liquid on the table and walked out of my hotel room. I was able to resist for several days, but the red, scaly skin came back. The lizard man's face was waiting for me in my bathroom mirror. The blue-suited man had given me a choice: give the children nightmares, or go back to being the nightmare. I've spent the last year finding ways to make the children drink the black liquid. Sometimes it's easy. I'll pour a drop on some kids' food in the local McDonald's while their parents have their back turned. I'll sneak into a restaurant and put a few drops in their ketchup dispensers. Sometimes it's hard. There was once I couldn't find a way to put the liquid in anyone's food, and I was running out of time. I was worried that I wasn't going to be able to apply the poison, and I was going to turn back into a freak. So I found a little girl. She was reading in the children's section of a library. I let her outside with the promise of candy. I held her down and poured a drop into her mouth. Sometimes it feels like all the ugliness that was on the outside of me is now on the inside. I have tried the liquid myself. The nightmares are indescribable, so I won't even try. But I will say that Mr. Blue Suit was right. There is nothing worse. It seems to me like I'm at an impasse. I hate that I have to do this. I hate myself. But I can't go back to being a freak. I can't bear to look at my horrible scaly face in the mirror. And I'll be doing this until I die. I give children nightmares. And I am so sorry.